So looking at an example, it says we have a telephone line from a top of a building has an angle of depression of 34 degrees. If the building is 25 feet tall, how far from the building does the telephone line reach the ground? So if we're using the steps that we wrote before, we want to draw a picture. So first thing we have is we have a building, and from that building there's a telephone line that goes from the top down to the bottom to the ground. So there's a right triangle there. And it says that telephone line has an angle of depression of 34 degrees. And with the angle of depression problems, you're going to have to be very, very careful. And remember that when you're making that angle of depression, it's from looking straight out from wherever everything started. So the line is starting at the top of the building. So the angle of depression is going to be from straight ahead down. So this is going to be 34 degrees right there. So we can make a right triangle there. And it says if the building is 25 feet tall, how far from the building does the telephone line reach the ground? So they want to know this length right there. So we can do parallel lines and say those two are parallel, so these two are alternate interior angles, which makes this one be 34. Or we can use the upside down triangle, whichever one works for you. If we're going to use the upside down triangle, we're going to have 34. This side right here is going to be 25 because that side next to the building is 25. And then it wants to know how far from the bottom of the building the line hits the ground. So that means we want to solve for that line right there, which is equal to this line up here. So that's the side that we're solving for. So if this is our reference angle, here's the right angle, there's our hypotenuse, there's the opposite, which makes this be adjacent. The sides that we have information for are opposite and adjacent. So then we need to figure out which of our trig functions uses opposite and adjacent. And that's going to be tangent. So tangent of an angle is going to be equal to opposite over adjacent. So in this case, tangent of 34 degrees is going to be equal to opposite is 25 over adjacent is going to be x. So to solve for x, we need to multiply both sides by the denominator, and in this problem the denominator is going to be x. X times the tangent of 34 is going to be equal to 25. Divide both sides by the value that needs to be moved away from x, that's the tangent of 34. So x is going to be equal to 25 divided by the tangent of 34. So x is going to be equal to 25 divided by the tangent of 34. And it wants it rounded to the nearest hundredth, so 37.06 feet. So there's your couple examples with angle of depression and angle of elevation. And that's pretty much how word problems are going to work whenever you're looking at them in terms of trig. And then we did some examples where we were finding angles and finding sides, not being told which trig function we would have to use and figuring out what they were. And then we also took a look at how to figure out which trig function we would use to write certain ratios. So like if this was a over b given, we would try a reference angle for a and reference angle for b, which trig functions it would be. If you have any questions, write them down and ask me when you get to class.